Seren had been Luna of Valdris for 2 years. 2 years of devotion. 2 years of silence when they whispered she was barren. 2 years of loving an alpha who she believed loved her in return. Then she heard him agree to replace her. It was the night of the Winter Council, and Seren stood frozen outside the closed doors, her hand pressed to her still flat belly where new life had just begun to grow. A secret she had discovered only hours before. A miracle she had rushed to share with her mate. But through the heavy oak, she heard his voice. Cold, resigned, final. If she cannot give me an heir, then I have no choice. Seren did not wait to hear more. She did not confront him. She did not weep, or beg, or rage. She simply vanished before dawn, taking with her a secret that would have changed everything. For 3 years, Valdris mourned its lost Luna. For 3 years, Alpha Kalen searched. For 3 years, the whispers said she was dead. They were wrong. When Seren returned, she was no longer the fragile Luna who had fled in heartbreak. She was something else, entirely. Something untouchable, something dangerous. And she had not come back for reconciliation. She had come back for the truth. Neither of them understood how much that truth would cost. The morning frost still clung to the windows of the Luna's chambers when Seren pressed her palm against the cool glass and watched the sun rise over Valdris. 2 years. 2 years since Kalen had chosen her at the mating gathering. 2 years since he had looked past daughters of powerful alphas, past women with proven fertility and political connections, and selected her, a nobody. An orphan raised by the pack's elderly healer. She still did not understand why. Because your wolf called to mine, he had said on their mating night, his voice rough against her ear. Because I could not breathe properly until you were near me. Seren had believed him. She had built her entire world around that belief. But 2 years had passed, and her belly remained empty. The whispers had started softly, little more than murmurs behind closed doors. Now they followed her everywhere. Barren, cursed, a failed Luna. Kalen never spoke of it directly. He still came to her bed, still held her through the night, still pressed his lips to her forehead each morning before council meetings. But she saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his mother, Lysandra, watched her with barely concealed contempt at every meal. The way the council members exchanged glances when she entered a room. They were waiting. All of them. Waiting for Kalen to do what needed to be done. Serene's hand drifted to her stomach, and she felt moisture gather in her eyes. But these were not tears of sorrow. These were tears of impossible, terrifying joy. The pack healer, old Mathis who had raised her, had confirmed it just yesterday. The herbs, the examination, the gentle smile breaking across his weathered face. You are with child, little one. Perhaps 6 weeks along. Seren had wept in his arms. 2 years of shame, 2 years of failure. And now, finally, proof that she was not broken, that her body had not betrayed her, that she could give Kalen what everyone demanded. An heir. She had wanted to run to him immediately, to burst into his study and throw herself into his arms. But Mathis had cautioned patience. The first weeks were fragile. Wait until after the Winter Council, he had said. Wait until the politics settled. Then tell him privately, away from the court's hungry eyes. So Seren had waited. One excruciating day of keeping the secret locked inside her chest. But now, watching the sun rise on the morning of the Winter Council, she could not bear it any longer. She needed to see his face when she told him, needed to feel his arms around her, needed to hear him say that everything would be different now. Seren dressed quickly, choosing a simple gown of deep blue, Kalen's favorite color, on her. She braided her dark hair away from her face and pressed her palm once more against her belly. Your father is going to be so happy, she whispered. The corridors were quiet as she made her way toward Kalen's study. The council would not formally convene until midday, but she knew her mate. He would already be there, reviewing documents, preparing arguments. He took his responsibilities seriously. It was one of the things she loved most about him. She was nearly at the door when she heard voices inside. Seren paused. The door was not fully closed. A sliver of warm firelight spilled into the corridor, and with it, words that stopped her heart. "The pack grows restless, Alpha." That was Brennick, the head councilman. 2 years without an heir. Your mother has made her position clear. My mother makes many things clear. Kaelin's voice was flat, exhausted. That does not mean I must act on them. But you must. A new voice. Female. Sweet as poisoned honey. Ravenna. The bloodline must continue. Valdris cannot afford weakness. And your Luna. A pause. Delicate and devastating. She is barren, Kaelin. The healers have confirmed it. Whatever defect exists within her, it cannot be remedied. Seren's blood turned to ice. Barren, confirmed, defect. But that was not true. Mathis had said she was pregnant. Mathis had smiled and wept with her and called it a miracle. I am not discussing this, Kaelin said. You must discuss it. Lysandra's voice now, cold as the frost on the windows. You are Alpha. Your duty is to this pack, not to some orphan girl you chose on a whim. Ravenna comes from strong bloodlines. She has already proven her fertility with her previous mate before his death. She would give you sons within the year. Silence stretched. Seren could not breathe. Her hand pressed harder against her stomach, against the tiny life growing there, the life none of them knew about. Tell me you will at least consider it. Ravenna's voice dropped, soft and intimate. I would be honored to serve as your Luna, Kaelin. I would give you everything she could not. And then Kaelin spoke, the words that shattered everything. If she cannot give me an heir, then I have no choice. Seren did not hear what came next. The roaring in her ears drowned out everything. She stumbled backward, her palm flying to her mouth to contain the sob that threatened to escape. He was going to replace her. Her mate. Her Kaelin. The man who had held her through nightmares and kissed her scars and promised she would never be alone again. He was going to cast her aside for Ravenna. Seren turned and fled down the corridor, her vision blurring with tears. Her wolf howled inside her chest, a sound of pure anguish that no one else could hear. She reached her chambers and locked the door behind her, sliding down against the wood until she sat crumpled on the cold stone floor. Her hand found her belly. The tiny spark of life that was supposed to save everything. But he did not know. He had already decided without knowing. And something inside Seren, something that had trusted and hoped and believed, went very quiet. If he wanted her gone, then she would be gone. But she would leave on her own terms, before dawn, before they could cast her out like a broken thing, and she would take her secret with her. The castle slept. Seren moved through her chambers like a ghost, gathering nothing. No gowns, no jewels, no tokens of her life as Luna. Those things had never truly belonged to her anyway. They were costumes for a role she had been auditioning for, a role she had apparently failed. She changed into simple traveling clothes, dark wool and sturdy boots. She braided her hair tightly against her skull. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw a stranger staring back. 2 years. She had given this pack 2 years of her life, her loyalty, her love. She had tended their sick. She had mediated their disputes. She had held dying elders' hands and blessed newborn pups and stood beside Kaelin through every challenge. None of it mattered. One failure, one supposed defect, and she was disposable. Serene's hand moved to her throat where the Luna's pendant rested against her collarbone. A silver crescent moon set with a single sapphire, Kaelin had clasped it around her neck on their mating night. So everyone knows you are mine, he had murmured against her skin. She removed it now. The chain pooled in her palm like liquid starlight. For a moment she considered leaving it on her pillow. A message, a goodbye. But no, let them wonder, let them search. She placed the pendant on her vanity table without ceremony and turned toward the window. The mate bond pulsed in her chest, a constant awareness of Kaelin's presence somewhere in the castle. Probably still in his study. Probably still discussing her replacement with his mother and his council, and the woman who would take her place. Seren closed her eyes and breathed through the pain. The bond would not break when she left. She knew that. It would stretch and ache and burn, a constant reminder of what she was abandoning. Some wolves went mad from the separation. Some died. But Seren had survived worse than heartbreak. She had survived being orphaned at 7. She had survived growing up without pack status or family name. She had survived the whispers and the scorn and the constant reminder that she was not enough. She would survive this too. For the child growing inside her, she would survive anything. The window opened silently. The Luna's chambers were on the 3rd floor, but there was a trellis that ran down the eastern wall, covered in winter-dormant vines. Serene had discovered it months ago, on nights when the castle felt too suffocating and she needed to walk beneath the stars. She climbed down now, her movement sure despite the darkness. The cold bit at her fingers, but she welcomed it. The cold was honest. The cold did not pretend to love her while plotting her disposal. Her feet touched frozen ground. The gardens stretched before her, silver and shadow in the moonlight. Seren did not look back at the castle. She could not afford to. She ran, through the gardens, through the outer gates, which the night guards had left unwatched, because who would dare trespass in Valdris? Through the forest that bordered pack territory, where the ancient trees stood sentinel and the undergrowth grabbed at her clothes. Her wolf wanted to shift. The animal inside her screamed for release, for speed, for the primal escape that 4 legs could provide. But Seren could not risk it. Shifting in early pregnancy was dangerous. The healers always cautioned against it. So she ran in human form, her lungs burning, her legs aching, her heart shattering with every step that took her further from the only home she had known. The boundary marker appeared as the first hint of gray touched the eastern sky. A carved stone pillar, ancient and moss-covered, marking the edge of Valdris territory. Seren stopped. Beyond this point she would be packless. Rogue. Vulnerable in ways that mated wolves rarely had to consider. Other packs would smell the mate bond on her and wonder why she was alone. Rogues would see an easy target. Hunters would see prey. But staying was no longer an option. Seren pressed her palm against the boundary stone. The rock was ice-cold beneath her fingers. I, Seren, Luna of Valdris, she whispered, her voice cracking. Renounce my claim to this territory and this pack. I release my bonds. I walk free. The words were not magic. They held no supernatural power. But speaking them aloud made the choice real. Final. She stepped across the boundary. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the mate bond in her chest flared with sudden screaming pain. Seren gasped, doubling over, her hand clutching at her heart. It felt like something was being torn from inside her, like claws raking through her chest cavity. Her wolf howled, a sound of pure grief echoing through her skull. And somewhere far behind her, in a castle that no longer belonged to her, she felt Kaelin jolt awake. He would feel it, the stretching, the wrongness. He would know she was gone. Let him wonder why, Seren thought savagely, forcing herself upright despite the agony radiating through her bond. Let him search. Let him never find her. She walked into the forest beyond Valdris, into territory that belonged to no pack, into a future she could not imagine. Behind her, the sun rose over the castle. By the time its light touched the Luna's chambers, by the time the servants found her bed empty and her pendant abandoned, by the time Alpha Kaelin burst through the door with wild eyes and a fractured bond screaming in his chest, Seren was already miles away. And growing inside her, unknown to everyone in Valdris, was the heir they had all claimed she could not provide. 3 years later, the woman who walked into the great hall of Valdris bore no resemblance to the Luna who had vanished on a winter's night. She was taller somehow, or perhaps she simply carried herself as though the world owed her its attention. Her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders, unbound and untamed, threaded with tiny braids that held silver beads. Her gown was not the soft pastels favored by noble wolves. It was black velvet trimmed with crimson, cut to emphasize the sharp angles of her collarbones and the confident set of her shoulders. But it was her eyes that stopped conversation throughout the hall. They were the color of winter twilight, pale and cold and absolutely merciless. They swept across the assembled wolves with the detached assessment of a predator deciding which prey was worth the effort. No one recognized her. That was precisely the point. "Who is she?" Whispers rippled through the crowd. The winter gathering was the largest event of Valdris's social calendar. Alphas from neighboring territories attended. Unmated wolves prowled for potential matches. The council used the occasion to broker alliances and assess threats, and this year, an uninvited guest had walked through the doors. "She came with the Thornwood delegation," someone murmured. "I heard she is a healer, trained by witches in the eastern mountains. Look at her eyes. There is something wrong with her, something dangerous." The woman heard every whisper. Her hearing had sharpened considerably over the past 3 years. Many things had sharpened. She did not react to the gossip. She simply walked deeper into the hall, her movements fluid and unhurried, until she reached the refreshment table and selected a glass of wine she had no intention of drinking. "You are causing quite a stir." The voice came from beside her. A man, young and handsome, with the eager smile of someone who fancied himself charming. "Am I?" the woman replied. Her voice was lower than it once had been. Rougher. The voice of someone who had screamed through 3 years of nightmares and emerged with something broken in her throat. "Indeed. Half the unmated males in attendance are trying to work up the courage to approach you." The man grinned. "I simply decided to be faster." "How fortunate for me." The sarcasm sailed entirely over his head. "I am Aldrich, Beta to Alpha Thornwood. And you are?" The woman considered the question. She had many names now. The name Matisse had given her as a child. The name she had taken when she fled. The name the witches had called her during her training. "Vespera," she said finally. The name meant evening star. It was the name her son had given her, in the fumbling way of toddlers, because she always came to his bedside as the first stars appeared. Vespera. Aldrich tested the word. "Beautiful. Unusual. It suits you." She did not thank him for the compliment. Instead, her gaze drifted past his shoulder toward the raised dais at the far end of the hall, and her heart, the traitor, clenched painfully in her chest. He was there. Alpha Kalen of Valdris stood beside his carved wooden throne, deep in conversation with 2 council members. He looked older than she remembered. Harder. The golden hair that had once fallen carelessly across his forehead was now pulled back severely, and there were shadows beneath his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. "Good," some vicious part of her whispered. "Let him suffer." But another part, the part she had tried so desperately to kill, ached at the sight of him. The mate bond stirred in her chest. After 3 years of distance, it had faded to a dull awareness, easily ignored. But now, in the same room as him, it roared back to life with agonizing intensity. He felt it too. She saw the moment it hit him, the way his spine straightened, the way his head turned, his eyes scanning the crowd with sudden, desperate intensity, looking for her. But he would not find her. Not the Seren he remembered. That woman was dead, buried in a shallow grave of betrayal and heartbreak. Vespera raised her wineglass to her lips and smiled. Kalen's gaze swept across the hall, passed directly over her face, and moved on without recognition. "Of course," She had changed too much, lost too much weight in those first desperate months of survival, gained it back as lean muscle during her training with the witches. Her face had sharpened into something elegant and cold, all traces of softness burned away. He did not recognize his own mate. But his wolf did. She saw it in the way he stiffened, the way his nostrils flared, the way his attention snapped back to her with sudden predatory focus. Their eyes met across the crowded hall. Vespera held his gaze without flinching, without emotion. She let him see nothing but a stranger, a beautiful, dangerous stranger who had somehow triggered his wolf's attention. Kalen's brow furrowed. Confusion flickered across his features. He took a step toward her, then stopped, visibly wrestling with himself. "Excuse me," Vespera murmured to Aldrich, who was still talking about something she had not been listening to. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd before Kalen could reach her. Let him chase. Let him wonder. Let him feel one fraction of the confusion and desperation she had felt the night she fled. Vespera had not come back for reconciliation. She had not come back for love or closure or answers. She had come back because, 6 months ago, her son Ashwin had manifested his first signs of wolf abilities, and with them had come a sickness, a wasting curse that was slowly draining the life from his tiny body. The witches who had sheltered her could not cure him. They had tried everything. "The curse is tied to his bloodline," old Bryn had said, her weathered face grave. "It originates in Valdris, in the pack he should have been born into. To break it, you must return to the source." So Vespera had returned, not for Kalen, for Ashwin, and she would burn Valdris to the ground if that was what it took to save her son. Somewhere behind her she heard Kalen calling for his guards, demanding to know who the woman in black was, where she had gone. Vespera smiled. The hunt was only beginning. The gardens of Valdris had not changed. Vespera stood among the frozen rose bushes the following morning, her breath misting in the cold air. 3 years ago, she had tended these gardens herself, had coaxed reluctant blooms from stubborn soil, had spent hours here, finding peace in the simple act of nurturing growing things. Now the roses were dormant, their thorny branches reaching toward a pale winter sky like skeletal fingers. "You should not be here alone." The voice sent electricity crackling down her spine. She did not turn, did not need to. She had felt him approaching through the bond, each step bringing him closer, each heartbeat synchronizing with her own, despite her desperate attempts to sever the connection. "And yet here I am," Vespera replied coolly. "Alone." Kalen moved into her peripheral vision. He was dressed simply today, dark trousers and a gray wool coat that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. No crown, no ceremonial chains of office, just a man, watching her with eyes that held too many questions. "You left the gathering quite suddenly last night," he said, "before I could introduce myself." "Did I? How rude of me. Who are you?" The question hung between them, sharp as a blade. Vespera finally turned to face him, letting him see the full force of her indifference. "Vespera," she said, "healer, traveler, no one of consequence." "My wolf disagrees." Her heart stuttered, but her expression remained unchanged. "Your wolf is mistaken." Kalen stepped closer, close enough that she could smell him, pine and wood smoke, and something underneath that her traitorous body remembered with painful clarity. Close enough that the mate bond screamed in recognition. "My wolf is never mistaken," he said quietly. "And right now it is telling me that you are important, that I should not let you out of my sight, that something about you is—" He paused, frustration flickering across his features. "Familiar." Vespera allowed herself a small, cold smile. "Perhaps you knew me in another life. Perhaps." His eyes searched her face, looking for something he could not name. "You came with the Thornwood delegation?" "I am attached to no pack." "A rogue?" Surprise colored his voice. "You carry yourself like nobility." Appearances deceive. She turned back to the roses, dismissing him. A dangerous move. Alphas did not tolerate dismissal, but she was no longer the timid Luna who bent to every expectation. Instead of leaving, Kaelin moved to stand beside her. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was heavy with unasked questions and unacknowledged tension. "These roses," he said finally, "my Luna planted them. Before she—" He stopped, swallowed. Before she disappeared. Vespera's fingers twitched toward the nearest branch before she caught herself. Her roses. The ones she had nurtured from cuttings she had begged from a traveling merchant. The ones she had sung to on summer nights when the castle felt too empty. "Disappeared?" she repeated, her voice carefully neutral. 3 years ago. Kaelin's jaw tightened. She vanished without warning, without explanation. I have searched for her ever since. Perhaps she did not wish to be found. His head snapped toward her. "What did you say?" Vespera met his gaze without flinching. "I said perhaps she did not wish to be found. Women rarely vanish without reason, Alpha. Perhaps you should ask yourself what drove her away, rather than hunting her like prey." Fury sparked in his eyes, then something else, something that looked almost like pain. "You know nothing about it," he said roughly. "I know nothing about anything," she agreed. "I am merely a rogue healer with no pack and no consequence. Now, if you will excuse me, I have business in the village." She walked away without waiting for his response. Her heart was pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. Her wolf was clawing at her insides, desperate to turn back, to throw herself into his arms, to let him hold her until the last 3 years dissolved into nothing. But she was not here for reconciliation. She was here for Ashwin. The village healer's cottage sat at the edge of Valdris territory, a crooked little building with smoke curling from its chimney. Vespera had been avoiding it since her arrival, but she could delay no longer. If anyone knew about the bloodline curse affecting her son, it would be Mattis, the old healer who had raised her, who had confirmed her pregnancy, who had wept when she told him she was leaving. She knocked. The door creaked open, and Matisse's weathered face appeared in the gap. His eyes went wide. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Seren?" he breathed. She pushed past him into the cottage, shutting the door firmly behind her. "That name is dead. I am Vespera now. But you, I thought—" Tears were streaming down his lined cheeks. 3 years, little one. 3 years I thought you were dead. I mourned you. I could not contact you." Her voice softened despite herself. "It was too dangerous. If anyone knew where I was—" Mattis pulled her into an embrace. He smelled of herbs and wood smoke, exactly as he always had. For a moment, Vespera let herself be held. Let herself be the lost girl he had raised instead of the hardened woman she had become. Then she pulled back. "I need your help," she said. "It is urgent." Mattis wiped his eyes. "Anything. You know that. My son is dying." The words fell like stones into still water. Mattis stared at her, processing. "Your son?" he repeated. "You mean the child you were carrying when you left?" "Yes." Vespera's throat tightened. "His name is Ashwin. He is 3 years old, and 6 months ago, he began to sicken. A wasting curse, tied to his bloodline. The witches who sheltered me believe the curse originates here. In Valdris. In Kaelin's line." Mattis sank into a chair, his face pale. "A bloodline curse," he murmured. "I have heard whispers. Old stories. But I never—" "Tell me everything." The old healer was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy. "There is a curse on the Valdris Alpha line," he said slowly. "Placed generations ago by a scorned witch, every alpha who takes a true mate, a fated mate, is doomed to lose them. The curse poisons the bond itself. It drains both the alpha and the mate. But one always dies before the other. The survivor is left broken, and any children born of that union are weakened. Vespera's blood turned to ice. What? It is why Kaelin's father died young. Why his grandfather before him. Mathis looked at her with anguished eyes. If Ashwin is truly Kaelin's son, then the curse runs through his veins, and the only way to break it. Tell me. The curse must be acknowledged by the Alpha, confronted. The witch who cast it left a failsafe, a way to break it if the Alpha proves his love is stronger than pride. Mathis shook his head. But Kaelin does not know. His mother has hidden the truth from him his entire life. She believes that if he never takes a true mate, the curse will remain dormant. Understanding crashed through Vespera like a wave. Lysandra, Kaelin's mother, the woman who had pushed so hard for Seren's replacement. She knew, Vespera whispered. She knew I was his fated mate. That is why she wanted me gone. Not because I was barren, because keeping me would eventually kill one of us and weaken any children we had. I believe so, yes. Vespera's hands clenched into fists. Then why not tell him? Why not tell us both? We could have. Lysandra believes the curse cannot be broken. She watched it drain her own mate until he died in her arms. She has spent her entire life trying to protect Kaelin from the same fate. Mathis's voice was gentle. She is not evil, Seren. She is afraid. Her fear has doomed my son. The words came out savage, broken. 3 years of suffering, and it had all been based on lies. On secrets kept by a frightened woman who had never considered the consequences. How do I break it? Vespera demanded. What must Kaelin do? Mathis hesitated. I do not know the specifics. The old texts are locked in the castle archives. Only the Alpha and his mother have access. Then she would get access. Vespera stood abruptly. Thank you, Mathis. For everything. Wait. The old healer caught her hand. Does Kaelin know? About the child? She looked down at him, her expression unreadable. No, she said. And he will not. Not until I have what I need to save Ashwin. Seren, please. He deserves to know he has a son. He had a mate, Vespera replied coldly. And he was willing to replace her without a second thought. He does not deserve anything from me. She left before Mathis could argue further, but as she walked back toward the castle, her mind was churning. Kaelin had agreed to replace her not because he wanted to, but because he did not know the truth. Because his mother had hidden the curse from him. Because he believed Seren was barren and the pack needed an heir. It did not excuse what she had heard that night. But it complicated everything. And somewhere in the depths of her shattered heart, a tiny spark of hope flickered to life. She crushed it ruthlessly. Hope was a luxury she could not afford. The castle archives were locked. Vespera stood in the shadowed corridor, studying the heavy iron door that separated her from the answers she needed. 2 guards flanked the entrance, their postures alert despite the late hour. She had been watching for 3 nights, learning their patterns, noting when they changed shifts, when they grew tired, when their attention wandered. Tonight, their attention would wander considerably. The small pouch in her pocket contained herbs she had blended herself. Not poison, nothing so crude. Simply a compound that would make the guards drowsy, suggestible, forgetful. The witches had taught her well. She was about to move when footsteps echoed behind her. You keep strange hours for a healer. Vespera turned slowly. Kaelin stood at the far end of the corridor, a single candle illuminating his face. He was dressed for bed, loose trousers and an untucked shirt, but his eyes were sharp and watchful. I could say the same for an alpha, she replied. I do not sleep well. He walked toward her, each step deliberate. I have not slept well for 3 years. Guilt will do that? He stopped an arm's length away. Close enough that the candlelight caught the gold in his hair. Close enough that she could see the exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. Why are you here? He asked quietly. Outside the archives, in the middle of the night. I was walking. I got lost. You are lying. Vespera raised an eyebrow. Am I? Yes. He stepped closer still, and she forced herself not to retreat. You have been lying since you arrived. About who you are. About why you are here. About everything. Perhaps I simply value my privacy. Perhaps. His eyes searched her face with that same desperate intensity she had seen in the gardens. But my wolf will not let it rest. Every moment I am near you, it screams that you are important, that I should know you, that something vital is just beyond my grasp. He reached toward her face. Vespera caught his wrist before he could touch her. Do not, she said. But the contact was a mistake. The moment her skin touched his, the mate bond exploded between them. Fire and lightning and agonizing recognition. Kalen gasped. His eyes went wide. It's you, he breathed. You're... Vespera released him and stepped back. Her heart was racing. Her wolf was howling. I am no one, she said, but her voice shook. Seren. The name was a prayer on his lips. Seren, please, it is you. I know it is you. I can feel it. She should run. She should disappear again, find another way to access the archives, and abandon this confrontation before it destroyed everything. But her feet would not move. Seren is dead, she said finally. You killed her the night you agreed to replace her. Kalen flinched as though she had struck him. What? I heard you. 3 years of pain poured into her voice. I stood outside your study and heard you tell your mother that if I could not give you an heir, you had no choice. I heard Ravenna offer to take my place. I heard you agree. No. He shook his head violently. No, that is not... I never agreed. I never wanted... I know what I heard. You heard a fragment. Kalen's voice splintered with anguish. You heard me stalling, buying time and trying to appease my mother while I figured out how to protect you. I never intended to replace you. I never wanted anyone but you. Vespera stared at him. The mate bond pulsed between them, and she could feel his sincerity, his desperation, his anguish. But she could also feel the memory of that night, the cold certainty in his voice when he spoke those damning words. You said you had no choice, she whispered, because I did not know how else to respond. Moisture gathered in his eyes. My mother was relentless. The council was demanding, and I could not tell them the truth. What truth? Kalen was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. That I would rather die without an heir than live without you. The words struck her like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, her hand flying to her chest where the mate bond burned. Kalen, I have searched for you every day for 3 years. He stepped toward her, and this time she did not stop him. I have sent scouts to every territory. I have begged witches for locating spells. I have offered fortunes for any word of you. And every night I lie awake feeling the bond stretched thin between us, wondering if you are alive, if you are safe, if you hate me. I do hate you, Vespera said, but the words lacked conviction. Then hate me. Kalen's hands cupped her face with devastating tenderness. Hate me forever. But do not leave again. Do not disappear. I cannot survive it a second time. His forehead pressed against hers. His breath mingled with her own. The bond sang between them. 3 years of separation dissolving in a single moment of contact. There is something you need to know, Vespera whispered. Tell me. When I left. She closed her eyes. I was pregnant. Kalen went absolutely still. I was going to tell you that night, she continued. I had just discovered it. I was so happy, so desperate to share the news. And then I heard you outside that door, and I thought, you thought I was discarding you. His voice was hollow. You thought I did not want you or our child. Yes. Silence. Then, very quietly, where is the child now? Vespera opened her eyes, met his gaze. He is sick, she said. Dying of a curse I do not understand. A curse tied to your bloodline. That is why I returned Kaelin. Not for you. For our son. The sound that escaped him was not quite human. It was the howl of a wolf in mortal anguish, suppressed into something almost civilized. A son, he breathed. I have a son. And he is dying. Yes. Kaelin pulled back, his expression transforming from grief to determination. Then we will save him. Whatever it takes. Whatever curse plagues my line, we will break it. Your mother knows, Vespera said. She has hidden the truth from you. The curse. The reason she wanted me gone. Everything. Something dangerous flickered in Kaelin's eyes. Then we will start with her. He took Vespera's hand, his grip firm and certain. Take me to our son first, he said. I need to see him. Then we will confront my mother together. Vespera hesitated. Trusting him again felt like stepping off a cliff. But she had no choice. Ashwin was running out of time. He is hidden in the eastern forest, she said finally, with the witches who sheltered me. Then we leave now. They moved through the castle like shadows, avoiding guards and servants. But as they neared the outer gates, a figure stepped from the darkness. Lysandra. Going somewhere? Kaelin's mother asked, her eyes moving from her son to the woman whose hand he held. Recognition dawned on her face, followed immediately by horror. You, Lysandra breathed. You were supposed to stay gone. The confrontation unfolded in the great hall, far from watching eyes and listening ears. Kaelin had commanded the servants away. The doors were barred. Now mother and son faced each other across a space that felt like a battlefield. Tell me about the curse. Kaelin's voice was ice. Tell me everything you have hidden. Lysandra stood rigid, her face pale but defiant. I protected you. Everything I did was to protect you. You drove my maid away. You let me believe she was barren when she was carrying my child. You have hidden a curse that is now killing my son. Each accusation struck like a blow. That is not protection, that is betrayal. You do not understand. Lysandra's composure cracked. I watched this curse drain your father until there was nothing left. I held him in my arms as the bond poisoned him from the inside out. I buried him when you were barely old enough to walk. Tears slipped down her weathered cheeks. I swore I would never let you suffer the same fate. So you decided to make me suffer a different one? Kaelin laughed bitterly. 3 years without my mate. 3 years of agony. A son I never knew existed. Dying of a curse I could have broken if you had simply told me the truth. The curse cannot be broken, Lysandra insisted. I researched everything, consulted every witch and scholar. There is no cure. You are wrong. The voice came from behind them. Vespera moved into the firelight, her expression cold. There is a cure, she said. The witch who cast the curse left a failsafe. Mathis told me. The curse can be broken if the Alpha confronts it. If he proves his love is stronger than pride. Lysandra shook her head. That is legend. Myth. I investigated every supposed cure and found nothing but empty promises. You investigated alone. Vespera's eyes blazed. You made decisions alone. You drove me away and kept Kaelin ignorant and never once considered that together we might have found answers you could not find separately. I was trying to save him. You were trying to control him. Vespera advanced toward the older woman, her voice dropping to something soft and dangerous. You decided what information he deserved. You decided which choices he was allowed to make. You decided that a life without love was better than a death with it. But you never asked him. You never gave him the choice. Lysandra looked at her son, her expression crumbling. Kaelin, please, I only wanted... I know what you wanted. Kaelin's voice was exhausted. I know you acted out of fear and love, but I cannot forgive you. Not yet. Not when my son is dying because of secrets you kept. He turned to Vespera. The archives. You were trying to access them earlier. What were you looking for? The original texts about the curse. The witch's exact words. If there is a failsafe, it will be documented somewhere. Kaelin nodded. Mother, you will give us access. Now. And you will tell us everything you know. Everything you have hidden, without omission or excuse. Lysandra closed her eyes. For a moment she looked ancient, defeated. Very well, she whispered. The archives were vast, dusty chambers filled with centuries of records. Vespera and Kaelin worked through the night while Lysandra sat in the corner, her head bowed, and occasionally offering information when prompted. It was nearly dawn when Vespera found it. Here. She held up a crumbling manuscript, her hands trembling. The original curse, and the failsafe. Kaelin moved to her side, reading over her shoulder. The text was archaic, difficult to parse, but the meaning was clear enough. The curse was placed by a witch named Morvain after the alpha of that generation betrayed her trust. She had been his lover, his confidant. When he discarded her for a political marriage, she cursed his bloodline to never know lasting love. But Morvain had not been purely cruel, she had left an escape. If the Alpha acknowledges his sins before all who have suffered them, Vespera read aloud, if he surrenders his pride and accepts judgment, if he proves through sacrifice that love matters more than power, then the curse shall break. But the sacrifice must be genuine, the surrender must be complete, and the acknowledgement must be witnessed by the one he has wronged most grievously. Kaelin looked at her. The one I have wronged most grievously, he repeated. That is you. Yes. What must I sacrifice? Vespera scanned the text again. Her face went pale. It does not specify, she said slowly. Only that the sacrifice must be genuine, something you value, something that proves love matters more than power. Kaelin was silent for a long moment. Then he straightened, his expression resolute. Then I know what I must do. Kaelin. Our son is dying. His words fractured with emotion. I have already lost 3 years with him. I will not lose another day. He took her hands in his. I will make this sacrifice, whatever it costs. But I need you to witness it. I need you to be there. Vespera searched his face. She saw fear there, and determination, and something else, something she had not allowed herself to believe in for 3 long years. Love. Real, desperate, unwavering love. What are you planning? She whispered. Kaelin smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. You will see. He turned and walked toward the door, paused, looked back at her one final time. I should have fought for you that night, he said quietly. I should have confronted my mother immediately, told the council to go to hell, refused to even discuss replacing you. Instead, I tried to be diplomatic. I tried to buy time, and I lost everything that mattered. Tears burned behind Vespera's eyes. Kaelin, I will not make that mistake again. He left the archives, and somewhere in the eastern forest, in a cottage hidden by witch magic, a 3-year-old boy with his father's golden hair opened his eyes and whispered, Mama? The curse was stirring. They were running out of time. The great hall of Valdris had never been so crowded. Every wolf in the territory had been summoned. Council members stood in rigid lines along the walls. Pack elders occupied seats of honor near the front. Common wolves pressed together in the back, murmuring with confusion and anticipation. No one knew why they had been called. The Alpha had simply commanded their presence at dawn. Vespera stood near the side entrance, hidden in shadow. She had changed into simple clothes, her hair pulled back severely. Beside her, wrapped in a thick cloak and held tightly in her arms, Ashwin dozed fitfully. He was worse this morning. His skin had taken on a grayish pallor. His breathing was shallow. The curse was accelerating. Whatever Kaelin planned, it needed to happen soon. The doors at the far end of the hall opened. Kaelin entered alone, dressed not in the formal attire of an alpha, but in simple white, the color of penitence, the color of surrender. Whispers rippled through the crowd. What is he doing? Is something wrong? Where is Lady Lysandra? Kaelin walked to the raised platform where his throne sat. He did not sit. Instead, he turned to face his people, his expression grave. I have called you here to witness something that should have happened 3 years ago, he said. His voice carried through the hall, strong and clear despite the shadows beneath his eyes. I have called you here to confess my failures as your alpha. Shocked silence. 3 years ago, my mate, my Luna, disappeared in the night. Kaelin's voice did not waver. I told you she had been taken. I told you I was searching for her. But the truth is far worse. She fled because she believed I was going to replace her. She fled because I was too cowardly to defend her against those who questioned her worth. Vespera's throat tightened. In her arms, Ashwin stirred. She was not barren. The words fell like stones. She was pregnant when she left. Pregnant with my son. A son I have never met. A son who is now dying because of a curse I did not know existed. The whispers exploded into chaos. Council members shouted questions. Pack members pressed forward with demands for explanation. Kaelin raised his hand, and silence fell. There is a curse on my bloodline, he continued, placed generations ago. My mother knew of it. She hid it from me, believing she was protecting me. But her protection has cost me everything. His eyes found Vespera in the shadows. It has cost us everything. Vespera moved into the light. The crowd parted around her, wolves drawing back as they sensed the power she now carried. The training with the witches had changed her in ways that went beyond physical. But it was the child in her arms that drew their attention. My son, Kaelin said, his voice cracking. Ashwin. He is 3 years old. And he is dying because I failed to protect his mother. He descended from the platform and walked toward her. The crowd watched in stunned silence as their alpha knelt before the rogue woman who held his child. The curse can only be broken through sacrifice, Kaelin said, loud enough for all to hear. Through the surrender of pride, through proof that love matters more than power. He looked up at Vespera, his eyes wet with unshed tears. I, Kaelin, Alpha of Valdris, hereby renounce my claim to this territory. Gasps erupted. Council members surged forward in protest. You cannot do this, Brennick shouted. The pack needs leadership. The pack needs truth. Kaelin did not look away from Vespera. And the truth is that I have failed. I allowed others to poison my judgment. I allowed fear to override my love. I deserve to lose everything. Kaelin, stop. The voice came from the back of the hall. Ravenna pushed through the crowd, her beautiful face twisted with fury. This is madness, she spat. You are throwing away your birthright for a woman who abandoned you, for a child who might not even be yours. He is mine, Kaelin's voice was steel. I knew it the moment I felt him through the bond. The bond? Ravenna laughed harshly. What bond? She severed it when she crossed the boundary. Whatever connection you feel is phantom, wishful thinking from a desperate man. Vespera advanced, shielding Ashwin behind her. You seem remarkably well informed about mate bonds, Ravenna. About boundaries. About curses. Something flickered in Ravenna's eyes. Fear? I know only what everyone knows, she said smoothly. Do you? Vespera tilted her head. Then perhaps you can explain why, when I consulted with the witches of the Eastern Mountains, they recognized your description immediately. The hall went silent. They called you Morvaine's daughter. Vespera continued, her voice carrying through the frozen crowd. Not by blood, by teaching. They said you apprenticed with a witch descended from the very woman who cast the original curse. They said you sought knowledge of how to strengthen it, how to trigger it deliberately. Ravenna's composure shattered. That is a lie. Is it? Vespera drew closer. You knew about the curse before anyone else. You knew that if Kaelin took a fated mate, she would eventually die. You positioned yourself as the perfect replacement, a woman with proven fertility, a woman who was not his fated mate, a woman the curse would not touch. I was trying to help him, Ravenna insisted. I was trying to save him from the fate that claimed his father. You were trying to become Luna. Vespera's voice cracked like a whip. And when I proved difficult to remove through normal means, you accelerated the plan. You told Lysandra about my pregnancy. You convinced her that keeping me would doom both me and the child. You manipulated everyone to ensure I would be driven out. Lysandra emerged from the shadows where she had been watching. Her face was ashen. Is this true? She demanded. Did you know I was being manipulated? Ravenna's mask finally fell, her beautiful features contorted with rage. You stupid old woman, she hissed. I gave you the excuse you needed. You wanted her gone just as much as I did. Do not pretend you were an innocent victim. I wanted my son to survive. Lysandra's voice shook. You wanted power. And why should I not have it? Ravenna spread her arms wide, addressing the crowd. Look at what the fated bond has brought this pack. Chaos, disappearance, a dying child. The curse exists for a reason. Fated mates make alphas weak. They make them vulnerable. I would have made Kaelin strong. You would have made him yours. Vespera's power flared, visible as a shimmer in the air around her. 3 years of training with witches had given her abilities that most wolves could only dream of. But he was never yours to take. The mate bond pulsed between her and Kaelin. Stronger than it had been in years. Stronger than Ravenna's schemes. Stronger than curses and separation and betrayal. Kaelin rose to his feet. Guards, take her. Ravenna tried to run, but the wolves closed in around her. Within moments, she was restrained, her powers bound by silver chains that had been prepared for exactly this moment. You will die, she screamed at Vespera. The curse will claim you both. You cannot escape it. No one can. Watch me, Vespera said quietly. She turned back to Kaelin. In her arms, Ashwin whimpered. His breathing was growing more labored. The sacrifice, she said urgently. It is not complete. You renounced your claim, but the curse has not broken. Ashwin is still... She stopped, looked down at her son. His eyes had fluttered open, pale gray like his father's, clouded with pain and confusion. Mama, he whispered. It hurts. I know, my love, I know. Tears carved paths down her face. Hold on, just hold on a little longer. Kaelin moved to her side. His hand found hers. The sacrifice must be genuine, he said. Something I value. Something that proves love matters more than power. He looked at their son, at the child he had never held, and understanding dawned in his eyes. It is not just about renouncing the title, he breathed. It is about accepting the consequences, about acknowledging that my pride caused this, that my failure to fight for you caused this. He fell to his knees before his pack, before his mate, before his dying son. I failed you, he said, his voice shattering completely. I failed both of you, and I will spend the rest of my life making amends. However long that life may be, whatever form it may take. I surrender everything. My pride, my power, my very existence. If it will save my son, I offer my life in exchange for his. The words echoed through the hall, and somewhere deep in the foundations of Valdris, in the very stones that had witnessed generations of alpha succession, something ancient stirred. Something began to break. Light exploded from the floor of the great hall. Wolves screamed and scattered as golden radiance erupted from the ancient stones, swirling upward in ribbons that seemed almost alive. The light wrapped around Kaelin, around Vespera, around the child in her arms. For a terrible moment, Vespera thought they were dying. Then warmth flooded through her. Not the burning heat of destruction, but something gentler. Healing. The mate bond between her and Kaelin blazed to full strength, stronger than it had ever been, singing with joy and recognition and love. And in her arms, Ashwin gasped. The grayness faded from his skin. His breathing steadied. His eyes, when they opened, were clear and bright. "Mama," he said, his voice strong and confused. "What is happening?" Vespera laughed through her tears. "You are getting better, my love. You are getting better." The light faded slowly, leaving behind a hall full of shocked, trembling wolves. Kalen knelt where he had fallen, his hands pressed to the floor, his shoulders shaking. Vespera knelt beside him, shifting Ashwin to one arm so she could touch her mate's face. "Kalen. Kalen. Look at me." He raised his head. Tears tracked down his cheeks, but he was smiling, a real smile, radiant with relief and wonder. "It worked," he breathed. "The curse. I can feel it. It is gone. Completely gone." "How?" "The sacrifice." Kalen's hand came up to cup her face with the same tenderness she remembered from their early days together. "I meant it. Every word. I would have given my life for his. For yours." And the magic knew it was genuine. Behind them, the pack was beginning to recover. Wolves helped each other to their feet. Council members gathered in tight clusters, whispering urgently. "Alpha," Brennick said hesitantly. "You renounced your claim to the territory. Does that mean—" "It means nothing has changed." Vespera straightened, still holding Ashwin close. "He renounced his claim as proof of his love. The curse is broken, but the pack still needs its alpha." "She is right." Lysandra stepped into the light. Her face was still pale, still marked by the revelations of the past hours, but her voice was steady. "My son offered to give up everything. That is precisely why he should keep it. A leader willing to sacrifice himself for others is the leader Valdris needs." Kalen looked at his mother. So much pain lay between them. So many secrets and mistakes, and years of manipulation, even if that manipulation had been born from fear rather than malice. "We will speak later," he said quietly. "There is much to discuss. Much to forgive." Lysandra nodded, moisture slipping silently down her cheeks. "I know, and I will accept whatever judgment you see fit." Kalen turned back to Vespera, to Ashwin, his family, the family he had nearly lost forever. "May I?" he asked softly, gesturing toward the child. Vespera hesitated for only a moment. Then she shifted Ashwin into his father's arms. Kalen held his son for the first time. The boy was small and warm and alive, gloriously alive, peering up at him with curious gray eyes. "Hello, little one," Kalen whispered. "I am your father. I am so sorry it took me this long to find you." Ashwin studied him seriously. Then, with the simple acceptance of childhood, he reached up and patted Kalen's cheek. "Papa has sad eyes," he announced. "Like Mama when she misses home." Vespera choked on a laugh. "He is perceptive, like his father. And stubborn." Kalen smiled down at his son. "Like his mother." The crowd watched in awed silence as their alpha cradled his child. Many of them had spent years wondering about the lost Luna, wondering what terrible fate had befallen her, wondering if their alpha would ever find happiness again. Now they had their answer. "People of Valdris," Kalen said, raising his voice to carry through the hall. 3 years ago, you lost your Luna. Today, she has returned, along with my son and heir, Ashwin." He extended his hand to Vespera. She took it, stepping up beside him on the raised platform. "There will be changes," Kalen continued. "The ban on witchcraft that has plagued our territory for generations will be lifted. Those with magical abilities will be welcomed and trained, not hunted and feared. The curse that shadowed my bloodline was born from prejudice and betrayal. We will not repeat those mistakes." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the crowd. Some faces showed fear, others showed hope. "My mate spent 3 years training with witches," Kalen said. "She returned with power and knowledge that could benefit us all. Valdris will become a sanctuary for those who have been persecuted for their gifts. We will be stronger for it, better for it." Vespera squeezed his hand. She had not expected this, had not dared hope for it. "And Ravenna?" someone called from the crowd. Kaelin's expression hardened. "She will face trial for her crimes, conspiracy against the Luna, manipulation of the Alpha's household, deliberate attempts to ensure the curse remained unbroken." He paused. "If found guilty, the punishment will be exile, permanent. She will never again set foot in Valdris territory." It was a harsh sentence, but fair. Death might have been justified, but Kaelin was not a cruel man. He had never been cruel. That was one of the things Vespera had loved about him, one of the things that had made his apparent betrayal so devastating. But it had not been betrayal. It had been manipulation, fear, and silence. And those could be overcome. Later, after the crowd had dispersed and the immediate chaos had settled, Vespera found herself alone with Kaelin in the gardens. Ashwin had been taken to the nursery by a team of delighted servants who could not stop cooing over the newly discovered heir. The winter roses were still dormant, but somehow they seemed less skeletal now, less dead, as if they sensed that spring was finally coming. "I should have fought for you," Kaelin said quietly. "That night. I should have stood up to my mother immediately. I should have told the council that you were my mate and nothing would ever change that." "Yes," Vespera agreed. "You should have. I was afraid, not of losing my position or my power, of losing you." He laughed bitterly. "And in trying to protect you through diplomacy and patience, I lost you anyway." Vespera was silent for a moment. Then she took his hand. "We both made mistakes," she said. "I should have confronted you instead of running. I should have trusted that what we had was real. Instead, I heard fragments and assumed the worst." "You had every reason to assume the worst." "Perhaps." She turned to face him fully. "But we are here now. Both of us. Our son is healthy. The curse is broken. The question is what we do next." Kaelin cupped her face in both hands, studying her features with wonder. "I know you are different now," he said softly. "Stronger. Harder. The woman who returned is not the woman who left. But I fell in love with you once. I would very much like the chance to fall in love with who you have become." Heat stung behind Vespera's eyes. She had spent 3 years armoring herself against this man. 3 years convincing herself that the love they had shared was illusion, manipulation, weakness. But standing here, feeling the mate bond pulse between them, she knew the truth. She had never stopped loving him. "I cannot promise it will be easy," she whispered. "There is still so much pain between us." "I know. I cannot promise I will trust you completely. Not right away. I know that too. But I am willing to try." She placed her hand over his heart. "For Ashwin. And for us." Kaelin's smile was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. A beginning rather than an ending. When they finally parted, Vespera rested her forehead against his. "I should tell you," she murmured. "The witches taught me more than just healing magic." "Oh?" "They taught me combat spells, protection wards, a few curses of my own." Kaelin laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. "Should I be worried?" Vespera smiled, the first real smile she had allowed herself in 3 years. "Only if you give me reason to be," she said, "but I do not think you will." "Never again," he promised. "Never again." They stood together in the garden where she had once planted roses, their hands intertwined, their bond restored. Behind them, the castle of Valdris rose against a winter sky. But the cold no longer seemed so bitter. The darkness no longer seemed so deep. Spring was coming. And with it, a new beginning for all of them. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, let me know in the comments. Your support means more than you know.